This is Lindsay J. Murray, Ability Grouping and its Impact on Academic Performance for Carson Newman College. Ability grouping is the practice of dividing students for instruction based on their perceived capacity for learning. Detractors claim that students who are considered low achievers do not receive the quality of education provided for those students who are considered high achievers. Supporters say ability grouping improves student achievement due to the fact that teachers are better able to plan meaningful instruction that is better geared toward each student's skills and concept knowledge. Ability grouping's abolition is not likely to occur anytime soon, given that it is so thoroughly entrenched in the psyche of educators all over the world. For the review of literature, from what I've found, homogeneous ability grouping is where students are grouped together who share some common characteristics, most commonly that is academic ability level. Heterogeneous ability grouping is where students are grouped randomly or purposefully grouped with students who work at different ability levels. The supporters of homogeneous grouping think it's easier for teachers to plan and students receive better differentiated instruction, where the detractors of homogeneous grouping think that it traps students into tracks which are almost guarantee that they'll never move up or down in the ability hierarchy. Classes for lower performing students in the literature also show to be deficient in comparison to the higher honors classes and the higher tracks. Literature states that lower performing students will generally perform better when working with students at higher academic levels, and that's across elementary, middle, and high school, while higher performing students will generally perform better when working with only other higher performing students. The methodology that I used for conducting the study in my class, it was my third grade students that were grouped homogenously for a month's worth of small group instruction. That was approximately 4 weeks. I used weekly tests and a checklist to determine academic achievement and reading scores as well as the level of student participation. After 1 month, my students were then grouped heterogeneously, where each group consisted of students at varying ability levels, usually from low to middle to high. I continued using weekly tests and a checklist to determine academic achievement and the level of student participation, as was done in the previous 4 weeks. Planning for groups changed from a more leveled approach with the homogeneous groups to essentially teaching to the highest student in each group when instructing the heterogeneous groups. All data was compiled and averaged after the 2-month study. During the homogeneous grouping phase, 6 lower performing students averaged a score of 80 on the weekly TCAP reading test, and each student consistently participated in group discussions and activities. During the same grouping phase, 8 higher performing students averaged a score of 93 on the weekly TCAP reading test, and each student consistently participated in group discussions. After the month of homogeneous grouping, we moved to heterogeneous grouping, and when the data was compiled there, we saw that the 6 lower performing students averaged a score of 86, which meant that their average increased by 6 points on the weekly TCAP reading test, but they demonstrated a marked decline in participation during discussions. However, their student activity participation was virtually unchanged. So they continued to work together as a group, but they didn't volunteer to speak out as often when they were in mixed groups. After the month of heterogeneous grouping, the same 8 higher achieving students that averaged a 93 earlier then were averaging a 94 on the weekly TCAP reading test, and their participation actually slightly increased among when they were with mixed students ability level. The conclusion that we came to here was that the lower performing students improved test scores and overall work quality when working with students of varying ability levels. It seemed that they were a bit intimidated to get involved early on, but by the end of the study their participation had improved but never reached the levels that existed with the homogeneous grouping when it was just lower students together and middle students and higher students together. Higher performing students did not seem to benefit much from working with students of varying ability levels. Though their participation level increased, it seemed like that was out of feeling that they needed to participate more to make up for the lack of participation from the lower students. Combining these two grouping procedures may be the optimal way to conduct small group instruction, but I honestly cannot say how this would be accomplished, and that could be a subject for another study altogether. And that would be ability grouping, just from what I saw out of my third grade class, and it shows some promising results, but it seems that there could be a whole lot more done with it, and given time, fruit could be gotten from that.